Hi, my name is Alano. Welcome to my YouTube channel. And on this channel, I predominantly review books, single book reviews, where we just kind of break down a book and the themes that I picked up on. Today's video, Emily Henry's much discussed, doesn't need an introduction, People We Meet on Vacation. Let's put this here. I read Beach Read last year. I gave it a 3 out of 5, I think. It was okay. I didn't dislike it. I just felt that that particular book was overhyped. But I decided to read People We Meet on Vacation. I have her 2 other novels down here, actually, because every now and then, again, I like to read books that are not heavy. They're fun to read. They're quick reads. And so I get why people read rom-coms or contemporary romance, because it's a nice buffer. It can be like a really nice palate cleanser. Now, again, like I said, I thought that Beach Read was overhyped. People We Meet on Vacation, however, spoiler alert, I got on with this book quite a bit. I feel like I noticed quite a bit of improvement in Emily Henry's writing compared to Beach Read and People We Meet on Vacation. You can't outrun yourself, not your history, not your fears, not the parts of yourself you're worried are wrong. So in People We Meet on Vacation, Poppy and Alex this is the love interest, and it's narrated in Poppy's voice. And they have been friends since college. They met their freshman year and they became best friends really in college, despite their opposite personalities. So Poppy is loud and bubbly and wears really bright vintage clothing. And Alex is very quiet, introverted, reserved. He wears, I would call him maybe more preppy, his style of clothing. So you automatically get this difference in the two. But they get on quite well. And every summer, they would take a vacation together. For the past decade, they've taken a vacation together. So that's through their college years and then into their 30s. However, the last vacation, where this book picks up 2 years after the last vacation they took together, they went to Croatia together and something happened. And so that something severed their communication, their line of communication, and they haven't really spoken to each other since due to this thing that shall not be named. And so Poppy she's desperate to have her best friend back in her life. And so she makes the decision to reach back out to Alex one summer and ask him if he wants to go on another trip. And in the back of her mind, she's hoping that this trip will mend the bridge between these two. And Alex accepts. ... So one reason I liked this novel more than Beach Read is because I feel like Henry massaged these characters a little bit more, even though we only have one narrator. This is not a dual narrative, like, for example, in The Flat Share, where you have alternating chapters between the male's point of view and the female's point of view. It's all in Poppy's point of view, but it does jump around between the present and going back between all these vacations that they've taken together. Some people didn't like the structure of the novel. It actually didn't bother me. I thought it was actually well laid out, where you can see how from 10 years all up until you get the Croatia incident, you see how the relationship was starting to get a little tense, because there's clearly an attraction between the two, where they're remained in the friend zone. They both have dated other people in between this time, but you can see how something is starting to get more and more tense. And Henry is using this timeline to show you how this has progressed over time. And in between, you have Poppy in the present, reflecting on these things, while she's also on vacation again with Alex. I felt like we were able to spend all this time with Alex and Poppy, and we really got to get to know them a lot more. Also, Henry plays a lot more with literary devices in this particular novel. And I'm going to into that towards the end of the review. But because I could tell that Henry was playing more with literary devices and symbolism and metaphor, that the novel felt more mature writing wise. Technically, the writing, it felt more mature, and you can see that she's massaging certain things and honing her craft more. Elizabeth Henry, she's not a bad writer by any means, but you could see how she is continuing to work, and I respect that, because now at this point after Beach Read, she could have put her name on anything and was going to be a bestseller. But you can tell that between her and her editor, they were like, fix this, fix that, go back and massage this, play around with this a little bit more. And I can always respect that. I like to see writers improve. I am not going to spend this review talking about Pollux. Is that going to be the name? Like, when you ship a couple, Pollux, Poppy and Alex? That sounds like something you need to go to the hospital for. Oh man, Poppy and Alex. I'm not going to talk about Poppy and Alex in their relationship. Because that everybody else has done that. I'm going to focus on other themes, because another thing I think why people like Emily Henry so much is she doesn't just focus on the couple. Poppy in particular is going through other things, just normal adult life, and it's relatable. And there are things happening in this book that are outside of this budding romance. So Poppy is actually a social media influencer. That's how but she does work full-time in this job. She works for a travel company, a travel magazine, but she got that job because she was or is a social media influencer. She leaves college early actually, and is able to pursue this full-time and then get a job at this magazine. She has accrued a good following through her blog by sharing her vacations. But not only that, sharing her vacations on a budget. So how do you travel when you're trying to save some money and go to these nice places and get the most out of them? Henry uses this as a way to highlight the facade that is social media. A lot of people what you see on social media is only what a person has chosen to post. Even if they're posting what seems to be something vulnerable, everything is calculated, especially for influencers. But somehow, even though we know that people are posting stuff that's highly curated, highly edited, the text has been edited, the photos probably been edited, people still take that at face value. It's a weird thing to me in social media how people just take what they see and believe it. It makes no sense to me. Knowing that people manipulate what they're posting and people are picking and choosing. Speaking from personal experience, I personally find it mildly amusing when people just take basically what I post on Instagram and think that's all I do 24/7. No, my Instagram is highly curated on purpose because my private life has no business being on the internet. You know, I joke, I'm like, I could be in another country and nobody would know because I'm not going to post things in real time. I just don't think it's smart. It's just not smart. I mean, cybersecurity is not something that I think that your average user takes seriously enough. Also, I was listening to a podcast of a professional content creator. He has a massive following on YouTube. And he was saying how when you choose to curate your social media presence under a theme, so like, oh, I only talk about medicine, I only talk about books, I only do product reviews or whatever, you can keep the rest. No, your content is not based on your life. And that's how another really good way that you can protect your privacy. We see this, and I went there for a reason. We see this with Poppy's friend Rachel. So Poppy actually lives in New York City now. Rachel lives in New York City. She met her in New York City. She is a social media influencer as well, and her presence on social media is very, very glamorous, and she's pushing all these products. But her real life, and she's quite bubbly, but in person, Rachel is blunt. She's to the point. She lives a lot more frugally than her social media presence would have you to think. And again, Rachel even mentions this, oh, that's how I keep my privacy. That's how I protect myself, because that's just a job. And I can separate the two. And again, Emily Henry here is just reminding you, what you see on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, or whatever is what people are choosing to post. And some people, they have a right to do it because it helps protect privacy, but also warning, what you're seeing is not always happy. Stop taking it at face value. There's a person behind that probably going through something. Half the people on Instagram have never lived in a world where every picture isn't edited. And Poppy, again, is having a difficult time. She's feeling a little disgruntled in her job. She's feeling some tension. Is it time to move on or not? She's going on these really nice trips, but she's feeling this bit of this malaise because there's this conflict going on between her and Alex. She really misses Alex in her life because even though there is a chemistry and a tension between the two, they are really, really good friends. They are best friends. And her social media makes it look like she's traveling the world and she's having a blast, but she's actually unhappy and she's processing some things in her life. I do like that these characters are in their 30s and not their 20s. I don't mind reading about 20-somethings figuring out life because we've all been there. But sometimes it can feel overdone, not gonna lie. I don't mind it, but it can feel overdone. And 20-somethings and 30-somethings, they're dealing with different things for the most part. When you're I'll speak from personal experience, when you're in your 20s, you're figuring out your career. You're still going through school in some cases. You're not settling down as much. There are some 20-somethings who settle down very, very quickly, but it's maybe more the exception, I think, especially in the 21st century. But in your 30s, I think you start to settle a little bit more. And as far as, you kind of you've picked your city, you've picked your career, you may have a family, or if you don't, you're as in starting a family of your own. If you don't, your friends are starting families, so they're starting to put roots down in places, and your priorities do start to shift as well. And so Poppy is going through this millennial 30-something malaise. She has put her roots down. She's settled on New York City. She likes what she does, but she can feel that something needs to shift career-wise for her as well. What does that look like? And she's starting to feel stuck. In multiple areas of her life, Poppy feels stuck. She feels stuck with Alex, with this conflict. She feels stuck at her current job. And so she's thinking about some things. She's frustrated because despite the fact that she feels like something needs to shift, she doesn't know how to make that happen. What does that look like? And so she's feeling this tension just across the board. So at this point, what happens when you've settled on a career, you settled on your location, and that's no longer enough, or they're starting to fall apart after you've worked so hard to obtain all of this in your 20s? Did you feel like you wasted your time, or did you pick the wrong thing? Sometimes I scrape myself off the sofa, stuff a frozen meal in the microwave, and as I wait for the timer to go off, I just think, I will have to do this again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day. Every day for the rest of my life, I'm going to have to figure out what to eat and make myself, no matter how bad I feel or tired I am, how horrible the pounding in my head is. Even if I have a 102-degree fever, I will have to pull myself together and make a very mediocre meal to go on living. I know I worked so hard to be this person, independent, well-traveled, successful, and I don't know who I am if I let that go. I know that there is still no other job out there calling to me, the obvious answer to my unhappiness, and that this one, which has been amazing for a good portion of the last 4.5 years, lately has left me tired. I just found that really relatable. I think that there are long sentences actually in these two quotes, but they're really well constructed. Again, you can see that Emily Henry knows how to use language, and she's gotten better over the years, which is a good thing. You know, the more you only get better the more you write, you only get better the more you practice, and that goes across the board. And some people may say, oh, that's so cliche, but it's true. Like, it's real life. You know, do you ever come home from work and you're like, especially if you have a 9 to 5 or you work for a company, you don't have the luxury of, you know, working for yourself and maybe creating your own schedule or changing your location, being able to work from a cafe one day or whatever. But I'm saying if you have a more traditional job, 9 to 5, you're like, wow, the majority of your life is routine. You spend it behind a desk, staring at a screen, and you're like, this is what I went to college for? Dang. And it's relatable, especially when you feel stuck. So yeah, I just found that relatable. And I like that is what Emily Henry is. That is one of the conflicts that Emily Henry chose to put Poppy through. Let's talk a little bit more briefly about literary devices, and then we're gonna wrap it up. I mentioned, like I said earlier, this book uses more literary devices than Beach Read. Though, having read People We Meet on Vacation, I am going to one day go back and reread Beach Read and see, is there something that I missed that Emily Henry was doing, maybe in the scenery or whatever? Is there something I missed and I need to go back and correct something? I want to do that. Because again, the more that I read and analyze literature, the more I realize that you missed so much and you need to go back and kind of refresh your memory and sometimes give books a second chance. So, in People We Meet on Vacation, the main device that Emily Henry uses is using the weather to indicate the tension and release between Poppy and Alex. I'm not even going to quote because there's a whole section. I'll show it. I won't read it out loud because there's some spoilers in it. I didn't annotate this whole book a whole lot, but this section here, I had to really get the pen out because the weather, or throughout the whole book, is a symbol or a metaphor for the current state of what's happening between Poppy and Alex. And it was actually subtly done at first, and there was a point you're like, oh, I see what she's doing, and I thought that was great. I love it when people do that. It actually reminded me of a book called The Weather in the Streets, which is a fantastic novel, by the way, not talked about a whole lot. This is a book I want to read. The Weather in the Streets by Rosamund Lehman, or Lehman, however you would want to pronounce that. Where the weather, you have to pay attention to the weather because the weather is also telling a bit of a story. It's giving you clues. And so Emily Henry is doing that here. And I thought that was great. And if you're the type of person who likes to break books down in that way and pay attention to those types of clues and annotate them or take note of them and use them to figure out how you want to incorporate certain types of devices into your own literature, I think that would be a really cool treasure hunt for you. So yeah, People We Meet on Vacation was a very satisfying read for me. Surprisingly, I know. Almost a complete 180 from Beach Read. I gave Beach Read a 3, but I was like overhyped. I'm going to reread it and see if I missed something. Hey, there's another book I'm going to reread. I'm not going to get into that now, but I'm going to reread it. Fine, I'll say it. My Year of Rest and Relaxation. I gave it a 3 something. I want to reread it because I read another book recently and I was like, there's a conversation to be had here. So My Year of Rest and Relaxation. I only read it last year. I'm going to reread that very soon. But yeah, very satisfying read for me. People We Meet on Vacation. It's funny. There are times in this book I chuckled out loud. It has quick banter. That is something that Emily Henry is good at. She is good at banter. And I like that Poppy developed throughout the narrative. There are times when she has some growing to do, and Poppy rises to the challenge, and she acknowledges that there are things that she's held some grudges in the past, based on she was kind of ostracized as a younger person because she was quirky and weird and didn't care how she dressed. She had a quirky style. She likes vintage clothing, and she's loud and boisterous, and but she was bullied in high school, middle school, and so she holds some grudges. There's a time in the book where she actually confronts somebody who mistreated her in the past, and she learns to move on from those instances in order to go on with her life. And so she grows quite a bit. Alex as well has some character development, not as much as Poppy. Again, we're not in his head, but Alex is a guy who doesn't like change. He likes the safe, based on some of his own issues growing up. He lost his mother at a very young age, and he had to often be the father and the brother for his father and his brothers. So he, a lot of times, was the head of the household, support wise. So Alex knows how to be there for everybody else, sometimes at the risk of his own needs in some cases. He's one of those people who has to be strong, he has to check up on everybody else, but nobody's really checking up on Alex. And so he has to learn how to let his own guards down, because he knows what it feels like to lose a mother, a loved one, very, very early on in age, and what that can do to a person and the hurt that that has on people. He saw how his father kind of suffered after that. And so Poppy is not a safe choice for Alex. So he has to learn how to let those own barriers down. And so there's a lot of interesting things to kind of talk about with these characters. So the thing that shall not be named, I'm not going to mention what it is that's caused a rift between Poppy and Alex. People found it to be underwhelming. I did not, because I found it to be realistic. I know of people who have had situations where, from the outside looking in, like, really, that is what split those people up. That's what caused tension in that friendship. But to those two people, that conflict is very real. And so I found it actually to be realistic. And I know that a lot of people get frustrated when they say that miscommunication or lack of communication is a cheap cop-out for creating tension in a book. I don't think so. I work in communications, and that is why people like me have jobs, because even adults have hard times communicating. Not everybody's good with their words, not everybody's emotionally mature, or some people don't know how to express themselves well, or they don't know how to listen to other people. And so learning how to properly communicate and how to be vulnerable with another person is very difficult. So I don't mind it when miscommunication is used as a plot device in a book, because I deal with miscommunication Monday through Friday, all day, every day. Okay? And I hope my colleagues communicate what it is that they want people to understand. And because they're overwhelmed. I have colleagues who are overwhelmed by having to communicate something to the public, and I'm like, oh no, this is what we're going to do, and they're like, oh well, thank you so much, even though it seems easy to me, just because I'm good at it. It's difficult for them because they just have a different skill set. And so all of that to say, miscommunication as conflict in a book doesn't bother me. That's why people like me have jobs. I gave this, drum roll please, a 4 out of 5. I did. I really enjoyed it. It was a fun read for me. I liked the conflicts that Emily Henry put in Poppy's life. Even though Poppy and I are exact opposites, I liked Poppy. I would be friends with Poppy. I'll probably have to take breaks from her because she's very, very extroverted, but I like Poppy. I like Alex too. I think they make sense. So that is it. Have you read People We Meet on Vacation? I know that People We Meet on Vacation is not as well liked as Beach Read, but for me, I liked it. So yes, have you read it? Were you surprised by, if you've seen my Beach Read review, are you surprised by how I got on with this? And so, yes, feel free to like, subscribe, and leave me a comment. Also, feel free to follow me on Instagram, where I get up to more bookish shenanigans. I post all of my reviews there first. I also post funny Instagram stories on my Instagram that have nothing to do with books, just to have a good laugh. So please feel free to follow me on there. The link is also down below that you can click it and take you straight to the profile. I'm going to wrap it up now, and I'll see you in the next one.